Hablé con Missy Stewart, la diseñadora de producción de Good Will Hunting, la película que puso en foco a Ben Affleck y Matt Damon como guionistas. Hablamos sobre el entusiasmo que tenían los dos para encarar este proyecto al punto de estar desde el principio en cada uno de los aspectos relevantes de la película, y también me mencionó a un personaje que quizás no lo tenemos tan presente a la hora de pensar en esta película, pero que sin él quizás no hubiese sido tan pero tan importante este proyecto.
We now return to Mira Akien and Contré with our latest interview.
Miramax had seen it and everybody wanted to go, but they needed a star to greenlight it. I think Robin Williams was their first choice, and he said yes, luckily. He's perfect for the part.
For the first time in his life, he's about to meet his match.
How many shrinks you go to before me?
5.
Matt and Ben came right away. They did all the casting and location scouting with Gus and I, which is not usual, and very fun. They were so young and so excited, and you know, their story sort of parallels Will Hunting's in that they were all, it was a Cinderella story, it was a dream come true.
I've been looking over this rap sheet of yours. Assault, theft, resisting.
I've spoken to the judge, and he's agreed to release you under my supervision.
And they knew Boston and Cambridge really well. South Boston, we all explored together, which in my mind is as much a character in the movie as the boys are, because it's part of their heritage in the script, and it gives them, they have to cross the river and take a subway to get to MIT, where Will works, but also where his genius is discovered. So it's two different worlds that we were trying to marry, bridge more. And so in the design, I tried very hard to make one a cool, kind of distant place. And Gus shot, you know, most of the close-ups more or less when the guys were together. And later on, as Sean and Will become more compatible, then those close-ups happen. So it was a cool, distant world across the river at Harvard and Cambridge and MIT, and a warm, very familiar world that was full of warm colors and warm lighting and was smaller. You know, all the rooms we picked, we on purpose built Will Hunting's apartment really small, so everything would seem cozier.
So what's this? The taster's choice moment between guys?
Can you tell me the story behind the bench where they sit, because it's now a memorial for Robin Williams?
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Well, the scene was written for the public garden by Matt and Ben. They knew it very well and thought it would be a kind of opening up of the relationship and the movie through a place. But we did have problems because Robin was only available for a chunk of time, like March, all of March, I think, and then he could come back for a week in May. And so we wanted the winter, we wanted the fall, which we got because of sort of the times we were shooting, but we had to get spring for that shot, so he had to come back, and we waited and waited for the garden to be in blossom. And we found a sunny day, the sun came out and the snow melted, and they were on the bench. And, you know, it wasn't hard to pick the bench because it had a view of the pond, and it was just bucolic. I mean, that is such a good scene that's set there. It's probably the most important speech in the movie, I think.
You're terrified of what you might say. Your move, Chief.
It was a community college, Bunker Hill Community College. If we took that sort of community college, almost looks like a high school. It's not the architecture of MIT or Cambridge. It's very modest, very kind of middle class to working class, and it was near Southie, so it felt right. And, you know, Sean and Will share the Southie background. So we decided to make it come down and be in the basement because Sean was also hiding. He was hiding from his potential almost as much as Will was. He had decided, even though he was a brilliant math student, to teach at this community college. And so his choices were all about how he centered himself in that community also in Southie. So we had him come down the stairs because we thought that gave a transition point for Will, where we see him thinking and going, and also Lambeau when he comes to find Sean that day and they have the argument. It just gave a great transition point as opposed to a hallway, which we wanted to use the giant hallway for the waxing scene, and we wanted them to be very different.
I need someone who can get through to him.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm pumped. Let's let the healing begin.
And then I just stuffed it with books because I knew that he was smart, and I knew his reading material would be very eclectic. And when I did the walkthrough of the set with Robin, I asked him, you know, about the books. Are you okay with the books I placed like here and here and here? And he was really excited because I chose a lot of Irish authors. I put some history of Vietnam because he'd been in the Vietnam War. That was a backstory. And a few other things that just, you know, posters that seemed right. And in general, we just wanted to make it really comfortable. You know, like a place where when Will came, he would sink into that chair, and even though his defenses were up, we could see that he could relax into it.
What about the improvisation? There's this myth around the movie regarding that joke that Robin tells to Matt.
My wife used to fart when she was nervous. She had all sorts of wonderful little idiosyncrasies. You know, she used to fart in her sleep.
I would have to check the script again. It sounds like Robin more than Matt and Ben. There was a lot of controversy about using the Red Sox story and them being able to wear, he has his Red Sox hat in that scene, and we had to shoot it once without it because we didn't get permission yet from the Red Sox. And Matt and Ben actually had to go to a game about a week before the movie premiered and ask the manager if we could use them. And they had seen a cut by then, so they were okay with it. But that was hard to get them to give permission. And that is a wonderful story, especially the way Robin tells it.
Yeah.
Steps up to the plate, you know, he's got that weird stand.
Yeah.
And then, boom! He clocks it, you know. High fly ball on the left field line.
Because Miramax was getting such a good rate on the Canadian dollar, we built all the sets in Toronto. But we did all the exteriors in Boston and Cambridge. And I suggested that because the bar was also, I felt, another character, that we definitely couldn't do that in Canada. We weren't finding the right kind of bars. They weren't neighborhood bars. Southie's kind of a small part of Boston, so everything is sort of scaled down, and Toronto's big. And anyway, so long story short, we found this tavern. We showed it to the producers, and Gus and Ben were already really on board with it. But we took Robin there right away when he came to visit because it became sort of a clubhouse for everybody. Like, we'd go there after work, or we'd, you know, cast extras out of there. We just felt really like it was the heart of the movie, like it was for the boys.
The most gifted mind to ever enter its classrooms.
This is correct. Who did this?
Who did the research for all those mathematic things?
That's a really good story. Gus and the crew, the cinematographer, me and Gus and the editor were all at breakfast one day in Toronto. We heard an accent in the distance, a very strong Irish accent. And Gus said, we got to get that guy in the movie. Because he was very Irish looking, and we were casting the extras for the bar. And so he asked me if I'd go over and introduce myself and ask for his name and number, which I did. And his name was Patty, but I'm blanking on his last name. I'll look him up right now. Patrick O'Donnell. He was just a wonderful character. So we brought him in and talked to him, and it turned out he was a math professor at the University of Toronto. So he knew all the formulas. So not only did he become an extra in the movie, but he became our math consultant. And he was so seminal to the film that Miramax actually flew him to the opening in New York. Actually, it was the opening in LA. He was just a wonderful team player. Matt had to practice those formulas. He'd had a cheat sheet, and then, but he did them all himself based on real formulas that Patty had, given.
If the professor calls about that job, just tell him, sorry. I had to go see about a girl. Will.
There were a lot of discussions with the studio. What would be, do you want a happy ending? Do you want an unresolved ending? Do you want a ending that's wrapped up in a knot? Of course, Gus didn't want a wrapped up ending at all. Yeah, so I think that the idea that he drives that beater car off into the distance implies that he's following her, but also following his own heart. And maybe, like all journeys, it doesn't end at her. It could have gotten sidelined along the way. It's a long drive to California from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So I think it was just that idea of going toward the horizon, fearlessly expressing kind of his new hope.
Son of a bitch. He stole my line.